So my name is Léa Badoz. I'm Program Officer at Eurogroup for Animals, and today I'm going to present the European regulatory framework on wildlife management and fertility control, but most importantly, what it could be and how we could get there. So first, a word about Eurogroup for Animals. So we are a membership organization. We have almost 100 members that are animal welfare organizations across the EU and beyond. And we build on this expertise on the ground to bring the voice of animals to EU institutions and improve the legal framework and the policy framework at EU level for animals. And we work on both domestic and wild animals. So yeah, I know it's a bit ironic that we are in the UK, but I will mainly be talking about the EU. Sorry for that. So I have a question for you, and you will see it's very difficult. What is this animal? Right, a red fox. And what do you notice about these two animals? It's fine, it can be in your head. But what I want to emphasize is really that they are two sentient beings. I hope you will agree with me that they are very much capable of suffering, both of them. We can imagine that they have a similar diet, that they play a similar role in the ecosystem, that they cause significant damages in a way. And now I will tell you a story. So 2 years ago, I was walking in the forest, and I saw two young foxes. I was really excited. I discovered a den. And so I went several times to observe the little family and their behavior, and it was really an amazing experience. I hope you could live that in your life. And one could think that I would have shared it with the people around me so that they can also live this. But instead, I kept quiet. I kept it to myself. And why? Because just like this first fox here, I live in France. And in France, foxes are considered as pests, or they call it species susceptible to cause damages. They don't call it pests especially. But voilà, and they can be hunted all year long with the most cruel methods, like underground hunting with dogs. So the dogs go in the den and most often even kill the foxes there. So that's really an awful situation. But if you just cross the northern border of France, just like fox could do also, you can go to Luxembourg, where actually there is a moratorium on fox hunting since 2015. There's not a lot of difference in terms of these two countries on the ecosystem, but there's completely different ways of managing foxes. So, and this is very typical. Foxes is one species, but there are others. This is typical of the differences across EU member states on wildlife management for species causing damages. There is no harmonization at all. There is some kind of harmonization at EU level on wildlife management when it comes to protected species with the Birds and Habitats Directive. So you have the species are classified in different annexes with different rules on how they can be managed. But there again, for example, for strictly protected species, there can be derogations that can be used by member states. And the way they use it differs a lot from one member state to the other. There is also some kind of harmonization when it comes to invasive alien species with the IS regulation that I guess a lot of you are familiar with. So it provides for a list of species that are recognized as IS across the European Union, and it provides for some rules on how to manage them. But there again, it can be applied differently in different member states. So we can see that there's diverse legislation and practices across EU member states. And one thing that I want to add is you could think, okay, yeah, it's normal that it's different because you have different countries with different contexts and different species. But there is not even an harmonization on the decision-making process to arrive to decide when and how to manage wildlife. And this is what is missing. And more harmonization is even called for by European citizens. This is a survey that was conducted at the end of last year. among 10,000 inhabitants of rural areas in 10 EU member states. And you can see that 65% support more harmonization across the EU. So, what is needed in terms of this harmonization, and how do we get there? This is what I will talk about, and don't worry, I will get into fertility control. So our goals are really, in terms of Eurogroup for animals, is really to improve the welfare of wild animals in wildlife management by acting on two different elements. So first, we want that animals are managed only when strictly necessary, and this enables to manage less animals, especially lethally, but also non-lethally. But yes, so less animals are managed, so we act quantitatively. And also, we want that humane management methods are prioritized so that the welfare of animals that are effectively managed, especially with lethal methods, is increased. So we act qualitatively. And really, fertility control has a role to play in both, because if there is fertility control available for one species, then it becomes not necessary to lethally manage it. And if there's fertility control, then there is a more humane method available. So we base our approach on the international consensus principles for ethical wildlife control. So I will not go into details on all these, and I guess most of you are also familiar with these. But I will just emphasize the two first ones. So it's really important to modify human practices. So before considering even the management of the species, to think of how we can change human practices. And then to make sure that eradication or control is justified. This is really important. So we came up with a wildlife management decision tree. And the first question, the first step is to question, are the species causing significant damages? And especially to the environment or to public health? Or do they represent a risk, for public health? So this is the first question. And then have prevention or correction measures, so like changing human practices, have they been put in place and effectively failed? And then, is there an assessment grounded in science that considers, okay, that clearly quantifies what are the damages of the species, but also taking into consideration the benefits that they can provide, because we always often focus on what are the damages, but they can also have some positive, some positive outcomes, like the foxes and rodent control, for example. And then has a management plan been developed and adopted, and this management plan must list all the methods that are available to manage the species, and if they are non-lethal efficient methods, they should be used in priority, and if they are not, there should be efforts put to develop them. So what we aim for, because we don't have the EU does not have a legal basis to really act on this in terms of legislation, so we are mainly aiming at EU guidelines that would help to harmonize the processes across the EU. And this would also help to promote the research in effective non-lethal human methods, and including fertility control. Oh, sorry. I misclicked. So, how do we convince decision makers? So this is focused on EU, but really it could be any decision maker. So we identified three different areas. So first, public support. This is very important. I mean, the UK, as far as I know, is a democracy, and so is the EU. So it goes to the point of like the decision makers are representing the citizens, and so they should listen to what they want, and when there are non-lethal solutions available, they should make sure that they invest in these, and so that they can be further developed and implemented. So public support is very important. It's better when it can be demonstrated scientifically. So when the attitudes of the people can be, part of social research, like we have seen this morning. So. Yes, this is really really an important part. Then there is also demonstrating the cost effectiveness. And here, what I'm talking about is really get economists in the room and really go beyond what is the cost of developing these contraceptive methods or things like that, but really look at avoided health costs, ecosystem services, and try to quantify all this. And really look if this is a cost effectiveness and compare it to the other management methods. Yes, and again, so I mentioned it before, but looking also at the benefits of the species when we build this case. This is important in terms of, being honest also in the assessment. And another argument that can be considered more minor, but that can work, because we always like, especially decision makers, we like to be the first and the best. So innovation, putting the accent on the fact that it's innovation methods, that can really work, and we can then frame the EU as a champion for humane management. And fertility control is also so, new and I know, it's not very new, but in terms of the public opinion, it can be seen as something new and positive, and so it can be really good to put the accent on that. So this is a bit to summarize. So the first thing I think for fertility control is to frame it within the wildlife management framework, like to say that this is the result of a decision-making process where we have assessed all the other methods, the damages, the costs, etc., and that we have a strong case to say that this is a good solution or one of the solutions. So, really have the whole process. I misclicked again, sorry. Then focus on species that must be managed. So my point here is that it's not because one species or one category of animal is being killed that fertility control can be one of the solutions. Like I said before, changing human practices sometimes can be an option. It can be cheaper. So it would be difficult then to convince decision makers that fertility control would be a good way if in the end other solutions that are cheaper have not been implemented and tried. And then building really a case for each species. So really looking at also the economic aspect and the public support. And then identify and engage with champion public authorities, and it can be especially local governments of cities that really, implement and promote this type of projects. So in a bottom-up approach, they could bring this to their national authorities, and in the end, this is how we can really have change at higher level. So I want to just make a little bit of a case for invasive alien species, because I think that this is, in terms of the EU, where we have the strongest chance to push for fertility control. Why? Because it's not because it is available. It is potentially available for 8 species, and even already available for 1, according to the manual for the humane management of vertebrate invasive alien species. So we already have a case to say this is a possibility. There is another thing, is that the EU does not recognize the welfare of wild animals. It does not recognize it in the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, basically. So there is not a lot of legislation on that. But there is an exception, and this is the IS regulation that provides that when applying eradication methods, member states shall spare any avoidable pain, distress, or suffering to the animals. And what is interesting is maybe some of you, when talking to authorities, they have said we cannot do capture, nurture, and release because the IS regulation prevents it. But what about this provision exactly? Like, if there is fertility control, it means that there is a solution to avoid pain, distress, or suffering, maybe. So it would be interesting to get at some point an interpretation of this legislation, maybe by the Court of Justice of the European Union, or something like that, to clarify this type of conflicts in the legislation. So in terms of invasive alien species, we already have a lot of data on the costs. They are significant, so it's easier to obviously convince decision makers because we are talking money. So yeah, this is from the latest IBES assessment on invasive alien species. But you know, there are many data on that. And also in terms of public support, so this is another result from the survey that was conducted last year. 70% of rural inhabitants want effective, non-lethal and humane wildlife management methods to be researched and implemented. So we can really show public support, but this is across species. So this is just an example for invasive alien species, but we can imagine having the same for rodents, etc. Yeah, just one word. So when I mention IS so much, it's because I think it's the best in the short term, but it doesn't prevent to then go to other species later on in the longer term. I'm done.
Léa, thank you. I was interested in the last message about rural communities wanting non-lethal methods. Did somebody also ask them who would pay for this?
No, the survey was not about who would pay. It was just, is it something basically that is important for you? Like.
Okay, and for all animals, or only for invasive alien species?
No, for all animals. But we can use it in the context of invasive alien species, but it was general for all animals. Yeah, it was not specific at all.
Thank you.